Welcome to Free Your Inner Guru. I'm your host, Laura Tucker. Thanks so much for joining me here on the podcast, where we talk about intentional lifestyle, intentional leadership, and intentional success. And that means success on your terms, not how everyone else around you defines success. And we have a core belief here that everything you need is inside of you, and that your job is to find it and bring it into the world. And that, my friend, is true freedom. You may have noticed, if you've been listening for some time, that it's been a little while since I've released a solo episode. And because of that, I just want to start with a big thank you. First of all, thank you for listening. And secondly, thank you to everyone who has taken the time recently to review the podcast. I've been becoming better at asking for reviews and realizing that ratings and reviews help to attract other awesome listeners just like you. They help to grow the podcast organically. And not only does it help with the growth and the size of the audience, it also feels really good and gives me incentive to keep on going. Podcasting is a funny medium. I'm sitting here recording on a Monday afternoon in my office. It is blazing hot outside. My husband's at work, and after being outside and going for a long distance cycle in the extreme heat a couple days ago, I am cocooning in the house in the air conditioning. So it was a perfect time to sit down and do an episode. But here I am talking into a microphone, looking at my computer screen. And you know what? It's not the most natural thing, at least for me, to be doing. My natural thing to be is talking live to people, giving workshops, speaking to groups. And part of that is because the immediate feedback is right there, people to respond to, and it's wonderful. So when a review comes in, I do a little happy dance. And so thank you to Christina and Amy and Karen. Christina and Amy are from the United States, and their reviews are showing on the American or on the US iTunes. And Karen, yours is showing along with several others here in Canada. And what I would like to do is reach out within Canada and the United States and ask for more ratings and reviews, because more is always better. But also, my stats show me that we also have a fair number of people listening in Australia, Germany, New Zealand, and Iceland. And I would do an extra big happy dance if some reviews came in from there. So that's me learning how to ask. A former coach of mine called it playing the game of ask. So we'll see how well I play by what the results are. So, and I can guide you to an article on my blog that is the steps on how to leave a review on Apple Podcasts from the phone or from iTunes. So anyhow, if I haven't lost you by now with all of that administration and asking, I want to, and hopefully I haven't, because I'm quite excited to introduce the Summer of Self-Care. It's been a really interesting year for me personally. It's the third year of my relatively new coaching practice. When I moved back to Toronto from Western Canada 4 years ago, the first year was spent getting settled, reestablishing relationships, taking care of some family business. My father passed away unexpectedly. And so I really didn't launch out with my coaching business as it is today until 2015. And these last 3 years have been more sedentary than I'm accustomed to. And I'm reaping some of the results. You know, in my coaching, we talk about recurring actions, and we want to get the recurring actions aligned with desired results and specific intentions, and behind that, values and visions and the big why. And, my big why is to raise consciousness at the highest level. And that includes my own, or it leads with my own. And if other people find being in my environment helps to raise theirs, all the better. But that part's not really up to me. I just do what I do and show up as who I am. But I got to say, physically, I have not been showing up. And I've been using my business as a reason to stay sedentary. So on Saturday, I got my ass kicked. I took the train with my husband and some friends, and we took the train from Toronto to Niagara, something I recommend anyone do out of Union Station. You avoid all the traffic, you can get there with your bikes, and that's what we did. And our plan was to cycle from Niagara Falls to Niagara-on-the-Lake, beautiful down the Niagara escarpment. And I'd like to think that if it wasn't the biggest heat wave ever happening, that my experience would have been better, but I know in my heart it wouldn't have been a whole lot better. Yes, it was excruciatingly hot, but I was the one at the back of the pack. And that's not a lot of fun, especially when I've had experience in the past where, I'm always a back of the pack runner, but it's because my body doesn't love running. My mind does, body doesn't, but I'm out of shape. And I characterize taking care of my body as a part of a balanced self-care practice. Now, when you hear the term self-care, I'm wondering if you, like me, or at least how I used to think, is that that was really selfish. And over time, I've come to understand that self-care is not selfish. In fact, it's our number one superpower. Our ability to be able to take care of ourselves helps us to show up for others. You know that saying, you've got to be able to love yourself first before you can truly love another? Well, that is true in self-care. Because when you're able to take care of yourself, it means that not only can you be caring and compassionate towards others, that it all starts with you. So let's go over what self-care is before I invite you to join me on the Summer of Self-Care movement, let's call it. So anything that you do with the intent of being good to yourself can be considered to be self-care. And this is a filter that I've started to use on the world. I've started to use it on every single thing from the obvious, mindfulness, nutrition, exercise, and that's the area that I will be focusing on, but also the state of relationships in any other environment in your life, including your business. I'm coaching a group of people right now who were part of a beta group for the Free Your Inner Guru leadership workshop. They did their workshop with me in April, and they're part now of an ongoing 3-month coaching program. And self-care is one of the 5 pillars of that workshop. And it's amazing when you continue with the self-care conversation and you frame as anything that is the next most compassionate and healthy move for you in any of your environments as self-care. Things like going back and cleaning up the books on your business can be framed as self-care. When someone is losing a lot of energy mentally, physically, and intuitively because they know that they're out of alignment in their business, it's not uncommon for the admin, especially on a new business as it starts to grow, to get a little bit out of control and not be current. Of course, everyone thinks it's just them, but I can assure you that it's not. So not only do we carry around a shit ton of guilt because we think it's just us, then we don't reach out for help because of the guilt and the shame around that, even though it actually is a sign that quite possibly that the business is growing. So when I asked 2 of the people in my group, as well as you might be able to tell by the energy or the emotion around my voice and my language, that I've been in this situation myself. I remember it oh so well because it wasn't that long ago. And so when you have something that's draining your energy like that, that is the opposite of self-care. That's self-punishment. And so by redirecting the energy on that and facing it step by step, whether it's bookkeeping or an exercise program or nutrition or a meditation and mindfulness practice, our results are what we do over time. They are the accumulation of what we do most of the time over time. So if we don't address some of these things, they're going to compound. And the consequences of that are so damaging, because not only do we carry that guilt and burden of shoulding ourselves constantly about it, we're leaking energy everywhere. And when you're leaking energy, it becomes very difficult to live in alignment with your values, because you're tired, you're run down, you're frustrated. And in addition to all those lower energy vibrations of shame and guilt and self-punishment that happens, and you start to withhold from yourself. Withholding from yourself, in my case, has looked like, well, I will lead an active lifestyle when? Well, guess what? My business is flourishing, and now I'm so flippin' busy doing everything that I have created over the course of the last 3 years. I haven't felt like now is the time. So now is the time. A funny little story that I can share with you that happened this morning. I was sitting down and meditating, and it may or may not have been a coincidence that I was on my 180th consecutive day of meditation. And I'll come back to that in a moment. That was my self-care decision at January 1st of this year. I never thought for a moment that I would do it for 180 days without fail, but here we are. It's amazing when you make a commitment and start taking one step at a time and let go of that outcome, what you can accumulate. So here I am, someone who's sitting down and quite contentedly to do my 180th daily meditation. And towards the end of the meditation, I felt my intuition getting ready to speak to me. And the challenge in that is not getting so distracted by the feeling that I miss it. But I stayed tuned in long enough and to receive the message that I could feel coming in, because there's always like this little rush of positive energy that precedes what the message or voice or download might be, and it usually occurs for me as a thought or a feeling. And that thought or feeling, well, let's just say today my intuition or my inner guru had a sense of humor, and she said to me, "Laura, pull your finger out." Yeah. Not the most elegant metaphor, for sure, but after I was done and celebrated on my Headspace app and saw that indeed it was 180 days, I looked and I was like, well, what area of my life could I pull my finger out? Well, the podcast was one. Doing a solo episode has been long overdue, so here I am. Just a few hours later, sitting down, 13 minutes into the first solo episode in a while. Hopefully not making a fool of myself with my very simple yet humorous inner guru telling me, and maybe she's telling you to pull your finger out. But the other thing that she's telling me to get busy on is to stop lamenting the fact that I'm, for the most part, pretty out of shape. I don't like being at the back of the pack. I don't like holding other people up. And I also have resisted my entire life the idea of aging. And it's very, very real, this aging thing. I'm 51 years old now. My body's a little different, and it requires a different level of care in order to stay healthy, flexible, moving the way I'd like it to, and feeling good. But here's the thing I know. I've done it before. I can do it again. And here's another thing I know. It's more fun and more effective to not do it alone. So my invitation to you is to join me on the Summer of Self-Care. And I'm not talking about any kind of ridiculous deprivation program or uprooting your entire life. I'm talking about let's make some self-care and some self-compassion a priority for the 8 weeks of summer that are in front of us. And here's how you can join me. First of all, you can go to lauratucker.com/SOS for Summer of Self-Care or Self-Care SOS. And it's a very simple page. I'm not getting fancy and complicated on this. Pop in your email address, your first name. Yes, you'll be added to the Free Your Inner Guru list, but what will kick out there is a series of emails with links and things for you to follow to get into our Facebook group, which I'll also leave a direct link to in the show notes as well. And I will be, as much as I am totally worn out on social media right now, I will also be, that can be self-care week number 2, I think. I'm going to write that down right now because we got to make this social thing a little bit more fun. I've got to tell you. Anyhow, I digress. But on Facebook and Instagram, I will be posting there as well. But the real stuff, the engagement, the conversation with other people with like minds, like intentions, and a similar desire to leverage the self-care superpower, that's going to be in the Free Your Inner Guru Facebook group. So I'm inviting you to join me there. Thanks so much for listening. I hope that my meanderings here today have given you something to think about, where your self-care situation is at, your connection to your inner guru, your higher self. And, really what we want to do is manage our energy, live in alignment versus withholding from ourselves. Because if I've learned one thing over the course of the last decade, if not lifetimes, sometimes the hard way, you are worth the effort. So come on, join me, and I look forward to catching up with you next week where we talk about the social media and our mindfulness environment. Take care. Have a great week, everyone. It's really great to be back. And I look forward to seeing you in the Facebook group and communicating with you outside of the podcast.